Welcome to the Catastrophic Comeback Podcast with American injury lawyer Clark Speaks, helping you find hope, purpose, and joy after a catastrophic injury.
So that reminds me. So when I was, when my kids are growing up, I would always just bring them wherever. Like, in other words, the thing was, if you're going to invite me to something, my kids are going to be with me. So if that's cool with you, then it's cool with me. So they've been to, any kind of party that I go to or whatever, or for a reception, and I've taken them everywhere. So we went to, I had to go to Cleveland for work, I don't know, 10 years ago. And so while I was there, I was like, okay, let's see a show. They have cool shows. They have good shows. They get good. And then there was a couple of comedians performing, and I tried to do some research and figure out, and there was no like vulgarity warnings or anything. It was right when Sebastian
Maniscalco,
yes, was
He's so
getting
funny.
started, and I'm like, okay, well, and I think I got a 14, a 15, and a 9-year-old. That's about right. And so we go, maybe it was 5 years ago. And so we go, like maybe they were a little younger, but anyway, we go to this show, and it was like a 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock show. And then there's another one at like 9 or 10.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is going to be good. And the first guy comes out, and he's great. He's a guy that you would probably recognize. I can't remember his name. Great, clean. It was good. And then Sebastian, who's a funny guy, it was great.
Funny.
And but it was
not for the kids, but he's hilarious.
What?
He's not for the kids, but he's hilarious.
Yes. So that's been the whole time, like, and I'm when I'm walking in, I'm thinking, is this the right? Because there's not another kid in the whole place, know. And so anyway, so it was fun. It was funny. He's a talented guy. Nothing at all. I mean,
Right.
but it's so nice to have an option for kids. I mean, they love funny stuff. Parents want to be involved with their kids. I want my kids with me every minute they can be with me, and and so I think that's a wonderful thing that you're building there, and I can see the effort that you're putting into not just participating in it, but building this as a thing in Charlotte and maybe the world.
I'm trying. Thank you, and that means a lot that you said that. It's my name is synonymous with that brand, and I wear that very proudly. Because there used to be, and I don't know if it still is, but there were people like, oh, I don't think clean comedy is funny. And I was like, nothing could be further from the truth. And clean is more profitable. If you think about over the years, clean comedians, again, you can go into more spaces, and you're more, I lost the word I was going to say, but you're more appealing to a lot of audiences. And that's the thing I really like too. I love that the people who I get to call, I don't like to say fans, but friends, range the ages. I have, people who are young who like me. I like people who are older. Again, I play well in all time zones. So, you get people from different ethnicities. And I love that. It was so funny. I had the amazing opportunity a couple of years ago to open for Theo Vaughn at Belk Theater in Charlotte, which was insanely crazy. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so good. And it was funny. So when I was going back to get in my car after the show, and I'm, getting ready to pull off, and I see these people like, oh my God, it's you. And I'm like, whoa. And I'm like, hey, and it felt weird. And I was like, okay, hi, but it's nice. So yeah, I mean, it's a good ride.
Well, so since I've become familiar with you and your career, I have sort of been more open and more observant of clean comedy as the thing. And I see, Nate
Bargatze.
Yeah, he's clean.
He is the master.
Yeah, he's a clean, and he's one of my favorites, along with you. I noticed that Seinfeld is mostly clean.
He's mostly. Can we put a pin in this for a second? I want to go back to Nate Bargatze for a second, because
absolutely
he did something that was so incredible. He sold out last year Bridgestone Arena in Nashville, Tennessee, and so happy for him that he did that. But what also it's saying that people love him, people love clean comedy. So that was so nice to see for him. So I'm really kudos to Nate Bargatze. He's worked really hard. He's so funny. He does it so effortlessly that it's just, I got to see him. He was here in Charlotte last year at Ovens on Turb, and I went by myself. And I just laughed from the moment I sat down to the, so good. So it's so happy to see, good guys like that win.
Well, so let me ask you this: who are some of your influences? Because it's hard to be. It's hard. Is it hard to when you're a pioneer in something,
Did
when
you
you're the
call me a
first over the wall?
Okay.
How,
I'm not being called that. Is that what you're calling me? I'm
I-
gonna put that on my business card if you said that.
it seems to
I'm
like, well, growing up, we had clean comedy. Cosby was in my opinion, was a clean comic.
Yes.
And then I remember listening. My cousin comes in. He's got cassette tapes, and he's like, "Okay, as soon as they go to bed, I got to show you." And he plays Richard Pryor for me. And I love clean comedy, but oh my gosh, like the brilliance of the whole thing. And I'm
One of
just
my
like,
favorite jokes is a Richard Pryor joke that I could never repeat, but it's one of my favorite jokes.
So you're just like, so I was like open to this whole, and then it kind of progressed from there. You've got Eddie Murphy and some different, and it seems like it goes down a direction, which is fine, and it's hilarious, and it has its purpose, and it's wonderful in lots of different ways. But it goes so far that way that now the idea of clean comedy to me is original, unique, unusual, encouraging, inspiring, and to me, it's absolutely a pioneering thing. When everybody else is going one direction and you stand up and you go, no, 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 even if it costs me something, I'm going in this direction because it's something I believe in, and it's because it's something I want to provide for people who are underserved. That's as pioneering as something can be, in my opinion.
It's interesting. When I first started out, I started out with another comedian, and I remember we had gone to a show. I can't even remember who it was at the time. And she was talking to this comedian who worked Blue, and she said something along the lines about me. She goes, "Yeah, see, she works clean and she doesn't want to change who she is." And I said, "Let me correct you. She will not change who she is." Like, it's not like this is like oh, hell, this is better. Okay, I'll go here. I was like, no, this is what you see is what you get. Here's the interesting thing about me. I like to tell people I can take everything in its place. And just because I work clean doesn't mean that all of my comedic influences are clean. You mentioned Eddie Murphy. Eddie Murphy to me is just brilliant. Like, I used to love watching Eddie Murphy stand up. For anyone, I mean, for out of everyone, he was the guy for me. So I have a tremendous amount of respect for his comedy career. But as I said, it ranges from Michael Jr., great Christian comedian who is so funny. Another one who just, he gets on that stage, he does it so effortlessly. Another thing I like about someone like a Michael Jr., I'm not animated in my movements on stage. I'm just, telling you jokes like this. You hear people who are animated. So I love when I can watch a comedian, especially a clean comedian, just go out there, give you their material, just very straight face, and it just delivers every time. So Michael Jr. is kind of on my Mount Rushmore of clean comedians. Brian Regan, another clean comedian who is so funny. I watched him. I got to see him too, front row at Belt, which was great. This was so brilliant on his part. He forgot one of his jokes, and he made a 10-minute joke about forgetting the joke. And like, it was the best thing ever. And then I like people like Will Ferrell. Will Ferrell, I can sit down and watch a marathon of Will Ferrell movies all day, and I will be the happiest camper. Tina Fey, Amy Poehler. So it ranges for me. So I have a lot of different comedic influences for a lot of different reasons.
Well, so there's two things that are interesting to me about what you just said. Well, lots of things, but one thing that strikes me is that authenticity becomes a very important component of comedy, which is interesting because as an attorney, as a trial lawyer, I remember going to in the school. I went to a school, and my focus was on trials and trying cases and how to do that. And so I had this professor, and we all kind of wanted to be like Perry Mason, a man, a big thundering voice, and I grew up in the church. Like when the church was open, we were there, not just like Sunday school, not just church, but Wednesday night and
Wednesday night Bible
different,
study, Sundays. Yeah, I get
yeah,
it.
vacation Bible school and the whole deal.
Vacation Bible study.
So that's kind of those were those pastors were kind of the what I had in my head. Well, this professor comes in, and she's like it's a female. She's about my age now, mid-50s, very soft spoken, and she starts to tell this story completely unrelated to law or anything else. She's telling about climbing Kilimanjaro just 25 years ago. I remember it to this day. And she's very soft spoken, very deliberate. And she's kind of, and by the end of it, I'm like looking around, and every single person in my whole class is leaning forward on the edge of their seat. And at the end of it, she kind of wraps it up with, this is not about you imitating somebody that you've seen in a movie or a pulpit or in a courtroom. This is about you finding your voice, who you are, and being honest, transparent, vulnerable, and open. And I thought that was one of the most profound things that I've heard. And so it sounds like to me that you have a similar philosophy when it comes to your craft.
That's exactly right. Listen, the best comedians are the ones, in my opinion, who can tell you stories about their lives. I can't replicate that. I can't like, I have these experiences in my life that are only funny when I tell them. You can say, oh, you know what, I heard her say this. You can't deliver it in the way that I could. But so that's what I kind of lean on, and the authenticity of my life in the moments. And it's funny because I told my pharmacist, I made a joke about him, and he goes, "Is it funny?" And I said, "Yeah, people laugh." And he said, "Okay, you can keep telling it." So, but I tell this joke, and it's like I realized that no one could quite tell that joke the way I could. I just came back from the National Speakers Association conference, and one of the things that I took away from it is that exactly what you're saying, is that we all have our own authentic and unique stories, and we shouldn't run away from it. A lot of times you can look at someone and say, like, I want to be, like that comedian or that speaker or that lawyer even. It's just like, no, you just be you and be the best version of you. And people, one of the highest compliments I get after a show is when someone comes up to me and says, you know what, I can so relate to what you're saying. That to me means everything. And when I first started doing comedy, I was talking to everybody like this. I was talking really fast because I was so afraid to be on stage. And I was like, oh my God, I gotta get out of here before they realize I shouldn't be here. That, and plus I'm a New Yorker, so we just naturally talk fast.
Right.
But then as I started getting comfortable, because the other piece of it is you get nervous when people aren't laughing when you first start. But as you start doing it, and to your point about the professor with her story, and you watch people lean in, you're like, it's okay that they're not laughing at every 10 seconds. They're listening to what I have to say. And that's the
Engaged.
beauty when you see a Nate Bargatze or Dave Chappelle. Chappelle is masterful at that. Storytelling. And to me, that's what I love the most about comedy, is the ability to tell stories. And so, I get to give you a glimpse of my life in this set through stories. And I love that.
Well, so you bring up Dave Chappelle. So what strikes me about Dave Chappelle, who is, if you think about the brilliant comedians, social commentators for generations, it might be Richard Pryor, Eddie Murphy, Dave Chappelle,
Chris Rock, even.
Chris Rock, Johnny Carson, Gary Sandlin, Jerry Seinfeld, some of these guys. But one thing that strikes me about Dave Chappelle is that he seems to have changed. When he went away and came back, he is much more social commentary and has a different. It seems like he has what do you think? That's my observation. He seems like he has a different message. Can you change over time? How does that work? What does that look like when, and when you're responding to different things that happen in the world, and you want to be able to say those things and maintain your authenticity and still be funny?
Yes, I respect anyone who uses their platform to speak out about injustice and things that are just not right. And I think after a while, when you see things happen for a number of years, you have no choice but to kind of speak on it. And so to watch his comedy, I remember when he first started and, watching him, and it was more slapstick than anything. And to see what he's become, I, I think he's one of the most brilliant minds in comedy. And I think he makes no apologies for who he is and no apologies for what he says. And I respect that tremendously. I also think he has gotten to a place from a stature standpoint where it's not about the money, it's not about the fame. It's just, this is how I feel, and this is what I'm going to say. And he finds a way to make it funny. And I think, honestly, at this point, if you buy a ticket for a Dave Chappelle show or you watch a special, you know what you're going to get. You know that you're not going to go in there and laugh every 10 seconds, and that's okay. So again, this has become his brand. And that's the thing about comedy too. No one says it has to be the same thing all the time. So you can evolve. As I said, what I found 5 years in is that, I became a different comedian than when I first started. When I first started, I was talking really fast. As I went on, I started talking about being a woman of a certain age and letting it come to me, being okay if they're not laughing because I know they're listening, and that sort of thing. So I think it's more than okay to evolve and to change and be different. And sometimes life makes you that way. You think about someone who's gone through something, you can't be the same. If you start out maybe more on the silly side of things, but you have a life altering experience, say like a cancer diagnosis or something, it changes you. And I think, how could it not?
So how do we? Let me ask you this. I sort of have always said, or always thought, nothing is really off limits in terms of, let's try to laugh about this situation, Um, and then doing what I do, sometimes there's just nothing funny about
Yeah.
child dying,
No.
there's no redeeming comedic value in that. It's just sad and heartbreaking. So how do you find ways to laugh through those types of situations?
It's really tricky. I mean, you have to, for sure, pick your moments and to know um things that you should stay away from. I never forget, I did a show with a couple of comedians, and it was right after Kobe Bryant died. And everyone's devastated, and it was just so tragic what happened. And one of the comedians thought it would be wise to make a Kobe Bryant joke about how he died. And the other comedian and I just looked at each other like, is he serious? Like, I just thought that was the dumbest thing to do. And it wasn't even a funny joke, And so I just couldn't think of what went in his head to make him think that that would be okay. Me personally, I don't find jokes about blasphemy funny. So when I see that, I cringe a little bit. But as a creator, as a creative, I am not one to kind of chastise people about what they choose to do. It just would not be for me. Like I said, I don't think you find a way to make sickness and illness funny. I actually was a little put off, honestly, with COVID jokes because people died, people died about this. And so I didn't really find that stuff funny. It wasn't my cup of tea. So for me, I think what works also is that I'm not controversial. I don't do hot button things. I don't talk politics. If I talk religion, it's more lighthearted. For instance, like, as Christians, we're taught to, you pray for people, and then sometimes I forget and I feel bad, that kind of things. But it's never anything that's very hot button. So I don't have those types of issues. I remember I was working with a comedian once, and he did some really strong political jokes, which was very tricky. And he got into a back and forth with an audience member, and I was like, this is not going to end well. And so me personally, I can't walk that stuff back, so I don't even touch it. you know.
Yeah. Well, so what kinds of things? So if you're going through your life and you're going through your day with your pharmacist or lady that cuts you in traffic or whatever, what are the kinds of things that you observe, that you see, and how do you come up with your material?
It really, again, it's like different things that happen to me, and I'll just start thinking, oh my gosh, that's funny. And I'll just start writing things down. And honestly, it literally is just life things. The thing that when I tell a joke about the pharmacist is like one day I was checking out and getting my prescription, and I said I'm on a first name basis with him. I go so much that we're on a first name basis. And I said one day I'm checking out, and in addition to getting my prescriptions, I have a Kit Kat Duo. And he says, you know, that's not any good for you. And I said, well, look at here, Ernest. I feel like you're judging me. Why don't you just go back there and fill my diabetes medication with myself? So, you know, so little stuff like that. So when it happened, and it really did happen. And so when it happened, I just thought to myself, I got to write this up. It was really funny. So just things like that. I just I just write them down. So it literally is life observations that happen to me.
Well, that is funny. I'll be laughing
Yeah.
about that all day. So
Yeah.
I'll tell the next three
And
people
that's why I
and
told him, I
see.
said, you know, I said, so when I first did that joke, I said, I want to joke about you. And he goes, I think, and it was funny. I said, it's one of my good ones. And so, and just stuff like that. And then like another kind of funny thing that happened is I needed a ladder out of Walmart. I had to change my smoke detector battery. And I was going to Walmart to get a ladder, but the ladder was like $150. But I see a step stool, a two-step step stool, and it was only like $28. But also on the step stool, it says weight capacity 200 pounds. So then I look at the step stool and look at the Kirk. So we think that's like a hard 200 or like, you know, so just like
Surely they overestimate or underestimate.
exactly. So, you know, but I'll tell you an interesting thing about that joke. And that again too really happened. And so I said, okay, I gotta write that up. So when I first wrote that joke, the way I would tell it is, you know, it's a hard 200. And I said, turns out it wasn't a hard 200, right? Then I said, you know what? I'm going to flip that. I'm going to say, what happens if it was a hard 200? So then I went to another club and I said, let me reverse it. I said, turns out it was a hard 200. So now I got to go back to Walmart, get a construction grade ladder, some ibuprofen. I just got me another Kit Kat. And it worked better when I told it that the ladder gave out on me. I mean, the step stool gave out on me. And so that too is how you kind of work material to say, oh, okay, it works better if I tell it this way, not that way. But yeah,
Yeah.
everyday life. And I tell my family and friends all the time, you get that everything is open to material. So like you say something to me, you could be in the routine.
Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.